Well, the game of the week, game of the season was supposed to be, didn't exactly live up to the hype. Philadelphia 31, Miami 17. It wasn't bad, but we didn't get exactly what we were looking for. And the Eagles didn't get a penalty the entire night, even though they committed many penalties throughout the night. Welcome to the show, everybody. Beyond the Box Score. I don't care about the outcome of the game, but it was pretty bad officiating around the NFL. I have to say that in week 7. Not the best week for the referees. We'll talk about the Eagles and the Dolphins. We'll rank rookie wide receivers rest of season. We'll give you our top 5 overall rest of season if we were redrafting today. We'll talk about, what else? Rashee Rice and Kendrick Bourne, Calvin Ridley, and more on Beyond the Box Score. Beyond the Box Score is back to what it should be, advanced stats from simple people. And last week, Jacob wasn't here, and the show was terrible. It was the worst show we've ever done. Dan was horrible. I was good, but I was dragged down by Dan.
That was horrible.
Dan was worse. And
I was horrible. Did you just say?
I'm just kidding. Well, but we are glad to have Jacob back.
The vibe was definitely off without Jacob, so I am glad to have him back.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you wearing headphones? No, you're not wearing headphones, Schneier. Okay.
You want me to?
No, that's okay. It's fine. Jacob, welcome back. How was your vacation from me and Dan?
It was great. I am feeling much better, and I think I just needed a week away from you guys, honestly. Yeah, something about it just changed things for me. I feel great. Got a lot to talk about today. I'm excited.
I know.
And that's my advice to listeners. If you ever are not feeling well, you probably just need a week away from me and Dan. So just listen less. The Eagles, we'll start with Eagles-Dolphins, 31-17 Eagles. They had
You're not going to let me recap my Florida week?
Not yet, dude. You you don't start the show with nonsense.
Okay.
The mailbag is one thing, not Beyond the Box Score.
Okay.
The Eagles had the ball for 36 minutes and 43 seconds, so that's what they do. Jalen Waddle was in and out of the game with a back injury. Jalen Hurts has a leg injury, and we don't know the severity of it, but it's not nothing, it seems. That's the way they were talking about it. But anyway, Jacob, what were your takeaways from a fantasy standpoint from this game?
Yeah, it was another big game for Dallas Goedert. Set up perfectly for him. The matchup there, it did not set up necessarily for A.J. Brown, the matchup going into the game, but we still saw another huge game from AJB. And it's obviously everybody knows how good AJB is, but I just wanted to point out, like, this is his second year in the system, and we're seeing him do what we had seen every year other than last year, which is completely dominate the targets. When he was in Tennessee, obviously not as much target competition, but he was like the predominant target hog in the entire NFL on a per route basis. And I was curious, like in his second year in the offense, being more integrated in, if we might see something like this. And I don't want to necessarily overreact to, 7 games, but he looks like the clear alpha and one of the best offenses in the NFL. So we're going to get to like, who's our top 5 if we drafted today. I think he's in that, which is pretty nuts. I think the ceiling is really, really high for him, especially like if the offense really kind of figures things out. Pretty impressive stuff from A.J. Brown, like always.
Yeah, he did not make my top 5, but he was definitely in consideration. And A.J. Brown currently is wide receiver 4 per game behind Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Justin Jefferson. And he's just having a monster year, 809 yards in 7 games. And I don't really know, Dan, what to say about DeVonta Smith at this point. I really thought he was going to have a big game, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of related. I mean, A.J. Brown is just too much of a target hog right now. And also Dallas Goedert is there. And also DeAndre Swift is there. So it's not happening for DeVonta Smith. He is outside the top 30 at wide receiver at the moment, which is also where he was last year before the Dallas Goedert injury. And then his season changed. But what are your thoughts on Smith? Do you still think he's a must-start guy?
Yeah, I thought we'd get a little squeaky wheel here like we got with Davante Adams this week, because earlier in the game, they were looking to Smith, and Smith had a big drop, I would call it. I don't know if you could definitely consider it a drop. It was a tough play to make, but that was a 20, 25-yard play that he didn't come down with that might have changed, would have changed his box score a little, but ultimately, like you said, Adam, that would have only led to, 6 targets instead of 5? It's not the role we were hoping for. It's not the role we wanted. You made a great point there, I think, about his pre and post numbers with Dallas Goedert's injury last year. Well, Goedert's healthy this year, so obviously that's not a good sign for him, I don't think. It just don't think there's enough pieces in this pie with how well they run the football with DeAndre Swift to kind of get both of these guys going if A.J. Brown is going to be this much of a target hog like he has been.
Smith was started in 88% of leagues, 4 catches for 49 yards on 5 targets. So, yeah, I don't really know. I don't know what to say at this point. I was saying buy low. He's going to turn it around. I feel like at this point he might be so cheap that you could still buy low and have hopefully a number 2 wide receiver who's going to have some big weeks. I still feel like there are big weeks coming for Smith, but also if you don't want to do that, then I mean, Jalen Hurts, we got to see how this leg injury is, that could be a factor too. Mm-hmm. But I'm kind of at a loss for words here with DeVonta Smith. I don't know. Jacob, do you have anything, or we're just, this kind of sucks and that's that?
Yeah, I think DeVonta Smith is really good, and you just are going to be patient. And if you want to buy, I think that makes sense because he's still in an elite offense. If anything happens to one of those other pieces, then all of a sudden he's one of the most valuable players in fantasy. And it's possible that he just outright earns a larger target share. We saw that happen last year over the second half of the year. He out-targeted AJ Brown from like week 8 or 9 on. So he can do it. Yeah, I would just be patient if you can.
Okay, tough break, I guess, for DeAndre Swift, who didn't get the touchdown. Kenneth Gainwell did. That was weird, but Swift's still the lead back there. All right, let's go to the Dolphins side of the ball, Dan. What stood out to you from a fantasy standpoint?
Well, it stood out that we could see potentially bad game script. We haven't really seen that too much this year, and it held back Raheem Mostert, who looked good on a carry or two, but ultimately didn't get a lot of touches in this game. And that was what stood out the most to me, I would say. Obviously, the Jalen Waddle injury kind of, I think, impacted their game plan and what they wanted to do to attack the Eagles. So that wasn't great for them. But, this is a team that lost an offensive lineman in the game they couldn't afford to lose, and Isaiah Wynn. That also hurt them, and they're down a lot of players in the offensive line right now. It hasn't been an issue to this point with the Dolphins because Tua's anticipation and because of how much speed they've had on the field, but it was an issue in this game. That's not going to happen every week. They're not going to face a D-line like the Eagles every week, but in these tougher matchups, when it gets colder, game script is not going the way they want them to. This is an offense that we can still see when they fall behind isn't playing at that same level as when they can control the game script and they're playing from ahead.
It's a good point about Isaiah Wynn because, obviously Teron Armstead is out. He's on IR, hopefully back at some point soon. That was the 3rd game he's missed. So that's the starting left side of the offensive line against that defensive line. It just can't run the ball on that. And I think they started getting to the perimeter a little bit with Raheem Mostert in the second half, and that was working a little bit better. But at that point, it was too little too late, and the Eagles controlled the clock. So just bad game script. Tua Tagovailoa, by the way, has now scored fewer than 16 points in 3 of 7 games. He has one solid game. He scored 21 points against the Giants. He has 3 huge games and 3 bad games. I don't really know what to make of it. It is what it is. He's the number 5 quarterback overall. He's the number 6 quarterback per game. You're going to start him just about every week. You know what they're capable of. Typically, when he had a bad game, it was because either Mostert or Achane had 100-plus yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. This was just different. This was just a bad performance by the Dolphins, and I think the Waddle injury, like you said, hurt. Anything else here, guys, on the Dolphins?
Not on this game.
Mm-hmm. All right. Look, what is there to say? Right? These are still going to be 2 of the best offenses in football. You're going to start these guys most of the time. I know if you just if you didn't know what happened, you saw the Waddle stat line. It wasn't good, but when he was on the field, he was actually making a pretty big impact, just dealing with the back injury. All right. We've got Sportsline. We got great content on Sportsline. Jacob, what can we find from you on Sportsline on a weekly basis?
First off, I got a promo code. You asked me last time and I was unprepared, but I got one. RJ took care of me. Thanks. Shout out RJ White, legend. Promo code Gibbs, first month for $1. And then it's very cheap after that. You can find all my work there, all the crazy stats you see me tweeting out. There's much more on Sportsline every week. We go beyond the box score. So we've got an article version of this episode, basically, where I help you make lineup decisions, kind of sort through all of the positions, different tiers at each position, help you understand which players are bringing more upside and different ranges of outcomes and stuff like that. DFS stuff, if you're into playing daily fantasy sports, there's lots of content for you as well. And then each week I do a week by week or a game by game breakdown that has all sorts of nuggets for every advanced matchup that you've got across the board.
I have a great DFS tip for everybody. It's the best way to learn is from experience. So I'm in a DFS league with one friend and his friends or whatever. It's like every week we set a lineup as a $50 entry fee for the year. And every week the highest scorer gets some money. And then I think at the end of the year, the highest scorer gets some money, whatever. So here's what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't almost every week, like I do, forget to set your lineup. And then I get a text at about 1:15 from our colleague, Darst, who runs this thing. And he says, you forgot to set your lineup. And then I have to set a lineup with only the players in the 4 o'clock slate. So that does make things very challenging. Yesterday, I think I had Stafford. I did have Kelsey. I came in 5th out of 10 with only the 4 o'clock players, but I'm going to try to set a lineup earlier in the week so I don't forget. And that is, you can't find that information on Sportsline. You can only find that here. Anyway, promo code Gibbs, GIBBS, $1 for your first month. Give it a shot on Sportsline, and then $9.99 after that. News and notes. Great news. Christian McCaffrey is going to play tonight, and Daniel LaRusso is going to fight. And Bijan Robinson should be ready for next week. All of the Arthur Smith criticism, by the way, I think everyone on the internet owes him an apology. Austin Ekeler actually hurt his, I didn't realize this, he briefly left. He hurt his other ankle yesterday. He did play through it, but it was the opposite ankle from the high ankle sprain in week 1. Saquon Barkley hyperextended his elbow, played through it, gets the Jets in week 8. Jerome Ford ankle. Keaton Mitchell hurt his hamstring. See how long Dave wants to keep hanging on to him. Deshaun Watson left in the first quarter, and that, so I thought, wasn't a huge deal. He'll be back in week 8. I'm not so sure listening to the post-game comments now with Deshaun Watson. That could be an extended absence. Christian Watson left in the fourth quarter. I haven't seen anything on. I don't think it's so bad. Luke Musgrave, not sure about his status, ankle injury. The Packers also had 3 defensive players, 2 defensive backs, and a defensive lineman all leave with injuries. They have Minnesota, and I'm not sure if any of them were able to come back, but they're a beat-up team right now, the Green Bay Packers. And that's more or less, Nick Bolton, linebacker for the Chiefs, dislocating his wrist. That's a big deal. I also didn't realize that Seattle was playing without 2 starting offensive linemen. 2 of their interior linemen, I think a guard and a center. So it was a disappointing game, I think, for Ken Walker, given the amount of carries he had and no Charbonnet. He was fine, but perhaps that had something to do with it. And also Seattle edge rusher Uchenna Nwosu left with a strained pec, and that could be a big injury for them. All right, when we come back, Dan wants to tell us about his Florida trip. We'll give you some snap count. I want to hear about it, too. And I also want to make fun of Dan for something he said about Florida last week that I forgot to do on the spot.
God.
You have to remind me about that. All right, we'll be right back with plenty of advanced stats and fun stories after this. All right. All right, so I understand Schneier and Schaefer went golfing on Friday. Let's predict who won. I'm definitely going to say Schaefer won, beat you by 8 strokes.
He beat me by way more than 8 strokes if we were counting. Though, if Don and Thomas might come on here and tell you in a second, I don't think it was Thomas's best day. You could see the talent was there and the flashes were there, but I think he'd tell you himself, right, Thomas? I don't think you would call that your best day you've ever had.
Was not my best day. I shot 90. The last time I played there, I shot 83. So 7 stroke.
That's the type of talent he has. You could see it in his stroke. Like, the dude's got a great swing. He's been playing his whole life. I picked up the sport this summer. But my funny story about that golf. Wait, did I cut you off, Thomas? Do you have something you want to get to?
No.
Okay, my funny story about that. Great day. Great way to end the trip. Golfing with Thomas, my friend Jordan, who lives down there, and a new friend of mine, Connor, who works for us at CBS Sports. I didn't know him until then, but great dude, great fun day out there. And I got to say this, Florida golf is unreal. We paid $27 for a course that was nicer than some of the $80 courses I play on back in New Jersey, like straight up nicer in every possible way. And part of that was because Thomas got me some kind of like frequent flyers deal or something. It was supposed to be like 42, but either way, when you could play golf for $27 on a beautiful course. And here's my funny story from that. I went into the golf thinking, I know Thomas a little bit. I've worked with him now for like a year and a half. And tell me if I'm right on this. This was your initial read as well, Adam and Jacob. Thomas just has like that demeanor and that voice of the guy who you would just think would never like get mad or frustrated or yell at someone. And I told him that in the golf course. He's like, oh, no, I will yell. And then finally I saw it start to come out when he hit a drive into the woods, slams the driver on the tee box, a couple of those moments, a couple of, curse words that you never hear from Thomas Schaefer.
Golf course.
Oh, yeah. A Thomas Schaefer curse, occasional, GD, like just some things out there that, you just didn't expect from Thomas Schaefer over there. He seems like that, guy who's never going to get overwhelmed, overworked up, but he had a couple moments like that and it was fun to watch.
Wow.
And, Dan just picked up the game and, he said he sucks and all this. This guy was hitting like every fairway out there. We just got to work. We just got to get it. We just got to get it in the lab and, work on that short game and, he'll
and he
be
irons.
a great player.
Thomas is going to help work with me. We're going to come back to Florida soon just so I can work with Thomas.
And the other thing, he was playing with my like backup set of clubs that I don't even know where I got them. And so different set that he's never played with, and Dan was killing it.
God, I love this podcast, Thomas. This is amazing.
You didn't even have the red clubs. What an economically efficient day. Just the only thing, Dan, is last week you called it Southern Florida. No one calls it Southern. It's South Florida. Please don't ever call it Southern Florida.
It's South Florida. But wow, that was amazing. I'm so happy that you mentioned that, Thomas, about all those fairways I hit with my drives. I don't drive far yet, but I was hitting a lot of fairways. I'm happy.
All right, let's get into some snap counts and some advanced stats. I don't really have a lot here, so I'll throw it over to Jacob. But Diontae Johnson only played 66.6%. He played 2/3 of the snaps, Diontae Johnson, in his first game back. Darrell Henderson played 10 more snaps than Royce Freeman. They both played 8 snaps on third down. It seemed more of a, well, this was Henderson's drive, this was Freeman's drive type of thing. I don't know if I'm reading into too much to the snap counts there. Might have just been that Henderson's drives were longer or something like that. Amari DeMercado played 80% of the snaps. Very impressive there. All right, Jacob, what do you have? What do you have from your advanced stats and all those types of things? What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, we got 3 advanced stat topics, so I want to get some discussion on each of these here from you guys. Dan looked into some of these on the film side of things as well, and then I've got some quick usage notes that I'll go through. The first topic is Jaxon Smith-Njigba. We finally got signs of life. Dynasty managers can breathe a big sigh of relief after this one. He ran a lot more downfield routes than we had seen previously, so his average route depth by week, this is per True Media, average route depth is the distance from the line of scrimmage where the initial cut in the route comes on average. 5.7, 6.4, 6.1, 6.9, 5.3 yards were his first 5 games. That was up to 11.4, so almost double in week 7. So Jake Bobo actually played a little bit more. He led the team in routes, and I thought maybe, it was a good performance from JSN, but it was still a lot of the same stuff, short yardage only type stuff. But then I saw this and looked into his route tree a little bit more. His air yards, all that was pretty encouraging. Led the team in air yards, led the team in targets. So really exciting stuff for JSN. And I think it's not just the dynasty note. I think season-long managers need to take note of this as well. He's available in quite a few leagues, honestly. And I think a late season, like full-on breakout is still well within his range of outcomes. What did you see? Did you watch out, JSN?
Yeah, I had a chance.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I had a chance to break down JSN on tape. Most of the time we come back on the same page of this, Jacob. But I will provide feedback when I don't. And I wasn't as encouraged by the tape as maybe you were by the stats. So his touchdown was just a purely broken, simple coverage breakdown by Arizona, where they don't pass off the route and he's wide open on a post. I was encouraged by what you said, that he lined up more on the outside and had more routes as an X or a Z, but I wonder if that was because Metcalf wasn't out. Something I also found discouraging was the fact that he only had 1 target the entire second half of that game. I didn't really understand why. I didn't see anything that reminded me too much of what I saw on tape at Ohio State, except for one play, which was very encouraging. With 8:26 in the second quarter, for those who want to watch on NFL Game Pass and have the film, he ran Geno came back to him threw to him on back-to-back plays. And on the second play, he won on the outside as a boundary with a beautiful display of what I believe he's best at, which is that ability to stop on the dime, sink his hips, and then create separation at the top of his route stem. That's what he did on that play. And you could watch that. I put it on Twitter. You can watch the Arizona D-back. He, comes 2 to 3 yards off the ball or off JSN when he makes that break and he gets into his break. So that's like the stuff I want to see a little bit more of. And I want to see a little bit more post catch. There was one play they threw to him designed around line of scrimmage. He had an okay move post catch, but I wasn't as encouraged as I really thought I would be, Jacob. And when a lot of those air yards did come on that broken coverage breakdown from Arizona on his touchdown, it does give me a little bit of stop there. I have more positive notes to talk about the other players you wanted me to highlight, Jacob, but I still want to see a little more from JSN.
That's cool. I mean, we're not trying to just gas people up here.
For sure.
Yeah, I wanted to hear what we actually thought about him. I thought, he was going to have a bigger second half, and the fact that he was kind of quiet, I did take note of that. I think it's mostly just encouraging to see that he was used in this role at all, because we've seen absolutely nothing showing any sort of upside with how he's been used through the first 5 or 6 weeks. So that is encouraging. And to me, Tyler Lockett doesn't look like the same player. I don't want to overreact to that, but he is getting older, and he did not take advantage of the absence of DK Metcalf here, and his per route data is much worse this year. So I think the window is open for Jason to potentially be a fantasy difference maker down the stretch, which previous to this, all we had was hope. We hadn't seen anything really.
That's fair.
Yeah,
Completely.
Yeah, actually, the bigger story for me coming out of the game was Tyler Lockett. Without DK Metcalf, they're just not doing anything against the bad defense in Arizona. Now, they only threw 24 passes. They only threw 9 in the second half, so 1 second half target for JSN. It's only on 9 pass attempts. But I mean, this is what I was talking about going into the season. And I mean, I'll try to update it now. Tyler Lockett has had 2 games with more than 68 yards in his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. In his last 17 regular season games. He's had nuts. 2 games with more than 68 yards. And then throw in the playoff game when he had 39 yards on 8 targets. So that's 18 games, more than 68 yards twice for Tyler Lockett.
And a big issue is they're not really utilizing him on the vertical plane. That's where he had a lot of his fantasy success. They're, for whatever reason, they're not dialing it up, or maybe I haven't studied him as closely, Jacob and Adam, but could be that he's not creating that same kind of separation at that level that he used to be. I'd maybe take a look in that after this podcast and get back to you guys on that, but it's something to keep an eye on for sure, because if he's not creating that same vertical separation, what is he really doing for this offense?
That's true. He hasn't. They've been using DK Metcalf downfield way more than they ever have, even more than when he was a rookie, and that's kind of come at the expense of Tyler Lockett. And I've been curious about why that is. If they don't feel like he's as effective on those routes as he has been, because it seemed like they had been trying to turn DK Metcalf into like a true wide receiver 1, winning on slants, winning on lots of short stuff, and just feeding targets to him. But that hasn't really been the way he's been used this year when he's been healthy. I'm concerned about Lockett.
Last thing on the Seahawks here is the last 3 games they've given up 3 points at the Giants, 17 points at the Bengals, 10 points against the Cardinals. They are better defensively. Now, obviously, haven't faced great offenses. The Bengals are not quite the Bengals. They're just running the ball and not throwing a lot and throwing conservatively. So they're just like, they kind of flipped the switch last year with Geno, and they just said, all right, let's be a passing team. And he threw a lot, and they've gone right back to their Pete Carroll roots of trying to win with defense and ground and pound. Yeah. It's not a great development. You hope maybe they'll start playing teams that are going to score more, but I don't know about week 8 against Cleveland. Washington, the Rams, they got the Niners coming up twice. They got some higher scoring teams on the schedule. But right now, their defense is playing well, and they're not throwing much. Okay, we will have to be a little bit faster with the rest of this stuff as we have a long show ahead of us. So what do you think? What do you want to say about the Steelers?
Yeah, the next big topic is George Pickens. You mentioned that Deontay only played 2/3 of the routes, but it was still incredibly encouraging what we saw from Pickens. We've never really seen him have a game like this with Deontay healthy. Week 7 target share leaders, we've got A.J. Brown, 50%, 47% to Tyreek Hill, 44% to Puka Nacua, 39% to Amon-Ra St. Brown, 35% to George Pickens. That is easily the highest data point he's ever given us with Deontay healthy. And I was really encouraged when I looked at his routes. They only used him on go, corner, or post routes, 31% of his routes. So this is something I've cited a ton, is that he's normally over 50% on those routes. And that is a huge problem for him because those routes just don't lead to targets for really anybody other than like Justin Jefferson and Chris Olave. But they are using him more and more on slants. And I thought that might not stick with Deontay back, but it did. They used him in a lot of slants, a lot of ends, a lot of hitches and stuff like that.
Yep.
And so this was not a good matchup for Pickens. When we've seen Pickens have his 2 big games this year, it's been kind of predictable. Even though it's been very good defenses in the Browns and the Ravens, it's very physical defenses. He fits a very specific archetype. He's very, very good against press coverage and beating man coverage, and that's when he shined. This was not that matchup. The Rams play very soft zone. They're like, you beat us with long drives. And I did not think we would see that from Kenny Pickett and Matt Canada's offense, but we actually did. And Pickens was a huge part of that. So like, to me, this is the most encouraging game of George Pickens' career, full stop, not even close. And I'm curious what you saw, Dan.
This one, I will gas up because the film was phenomenal on George Pickens. Just absolutely phenomenal. I think he is one of the few potential true alpha X receivers you can line up as the actual X receiver. And then sometimes it's 3-by-1 as the backside, but sometimes just the lone one receiver on that side. And he will win. He won on a slant early, like you talked about, where he created so much separation with his release off the line of scrimmage, that it was a 17-yard gain on what should have been a 4 or 5 yard gain. Later in the game on 3rd and 9, it could have been an even bigger game. This is 7:43 left in the first quarter for those who want to see on game film. Pickett threw a deep ball out of bounds where Pickens had a step, and with his ability to make contested catches, you got to give him a chance, but it was out of bounds. Later in the game, on 2nd and 9 with 5:22 in the second quarter, Pickett came back to Pickens on a back shoulder for 20 yards. And here's what really impressed me on both of those plays, Jacob and Adam. On both of those plays, the post snap and Pickett has his eyes, the quarterback, on the safety on the side of the field of George Pickens, both before and after the snap. On both plays, that safety rotated down post snap. What happened immediately when that safety rotated down post snap? Pickett made the decision in his head that now I know, because the safety rotated down post snap, George Pickens, is going to have a one-on-one on the outside. I'm going there. He just made the decision to go there both times. That kind of confidence that he showed in him. One was a ball Pickens on 3rd and 9 threw out of bounds. Pickens could have had the catch, but Pickett missed the throw. The other one was a back shoulder for a 20-yard gain. And like you said, there were dig routes on film. There were slants. There were all different kind of routes. Anytime he saw a one-on-one with Pickens, he tried to get him the football, which is awesome to see from a fantasy standpoint. This was big time. Like, I have been hesitant with Pickens because of mostly just because I don't like Kenny Pickett and Matt Canada. But first of all, the Steelers came out in this game, shotgun 11 personnel. I love to see that. They weren't just kind of shelling that, that shell style offense. Maybe with Deontay Johnson back on the field, we're going to see an expansion of what Matt Canada has to offer as a play caller. I don't know, but it certainly felt like it in this game. So it was really encouraging for me as well, Jacob, especially with George Pickens. And look, if he's going to get those one-on-ones on the outside, got to give him the chance. Pickett knows that, and he was giving him those chances.
I love it.
I heard on the broadcast that Pickett said, if I get a chance to throw to George Pickens one-on-one, I'm doing it. So totally backed up. Yeah, totally backed up what you were saying there. My only issue is like the Steelers scored 17 points and had 300 total yards.
Yeah.
Oh, no. How many points did they score? I'm sorry. They had 17 first downs.
24, I think.
24 points. And they had total yards, and they were lucky they got a short field a couple times, I think, to score. So it was still a struggle for them.
To me, he profiles very similarly to someone like Chris Olave or Mike Evans. I don't think he's been as good of a player as those guys, so I have a hard time putting him in that tier. But what we're seeing right now, I think he belongs in that range. Like an offense we don't feel great about, that maybe will produce a lot of empty air yards, but like the role is there for him in the same way it is for somebody like Olave or Evans or even Nico Collins, everybody's favorite, sleeper now. Would you take all those guys over him? What do you have on that?
That's a great question.
I'd definitely take Olave and Evans over Pickens.
I love what I saw in this game. Yeah, go ahead.
And I hate what we're seeing in New Orleans.
I hate what we're seeing in New Orleans. I don't know if I want to go all in yet on a Kenny Pickett offense for reasons Adam kind of alluded to. But it's so much tougher for these defenses to use that bracket coverage, that umbrella coverage over Kenny Pickens when Deontay Johnson is on the field. And like you just said, Adam, that was confirmed on film. When he saw that safety rotate down, he was going to Pickens. So that's a great sign, I feel like, for a fantasy standpoint.
I'm not disputing that, but I think you got to give Evans credit. I'm a big Evans skeptic, but you got to give him credit. Olave, I think Olave's been fine. He had a couple of games where one game Derek Carr couldn't throw the ball downfield. Another game was just a bad day. But I like Olave. Every time he touches the ball, it's just his speed. It just really jumps off the page. But I guess you could say Kamara's hurting Olave, and I get that. But I can't take Pickens over Olave. I don't have any beef with Olave right now. I would call him a buy low. What's wrong with what you're seeing from the Saints, Jacob?
They just aren't targeting Olave at the rate that I would like. And when they do, it's uncatchable at one of the highest rates of any player in the NFL. I just think it's been worse than it was last year with Andy Dalton. Heath has talked about this a lot. Derek Carr is just, I don't know, man. I do not like what we're seeing from Carr at all. Maybe it's just health, but he's captain check down right now. And when he does throw deep, it's been terrible.
Well, I don't know, man. Olave's got double-digit targets in 5 of 7 games.
That's because they're producing absolutely ridiculous play volume. The Saints had 87 plays, which is more than anyone's had in any game this year, and is the 3rd or 4th most since the start of 2022.
Oh, the other thing that I want to mention, because the Jacksonville game, 15 targets, 57 yards for Olave. Their offensive line, the Saints' offensive line, so beat up. That I think is a bigger issue. And that is why I think Derek Carr is getting rid of the ball so quickly. Against Tampa Bay, it was definitely his arm, his elbow. last week against Jacksonville, it was the pass rush. I mean, he was just skittish. So they definitely need to get healthy on the line. That will help. But I am definitely taking Olave and Evans over Pickens. I think it's a kind of a toss-up with Nico Collins. How do you rank them, Jacob?
I think I would take all of them over Pickens, but I think he is approaching that territory. And if we get even 1 or 2 more games strung together like this with similar data points, where he's not just the downfield threat, he's not running all these go corner post routes, I think he could easily surpass all of them.
Okay, last thing from you, Jacob.
So Denver's backfield usage is swinging more and more towards Javonte Williams, and he is also looking more and more like himself each week. So I'm really excited about that. When healthy, Javonte Williams is one of the most explosive rushers in the league. He can beat defending opposing tacklers in so many different ways and break off explosive runs. And so I just love to see this, love to see him getting healthy. He did not his avoided tackle rate per True Media was not above 20% in any of his first 4 games. The past 2 games, it's at 30 and 40%. And then, we saw season high in snap rate, season high in route involvement rate for him this week. Over the past month, Javonte ranks 3rd in avoided tackle rate, 4th in yards after contact per rush, and 2nd in explosive rush rate. Only 1 running back is ahead of him in all 3 categories, and it's Julian McLaughlin. Only an 18% snap rate for McLaughlin this week, though, for what it's worth.
This is an underrated storyline for sure. The big winner for Javonte, because he had a touchdown called back too.
Yep.
96 total yards. Did you take a look at him, Dan?
Yeah, I got to see his film. His film backed up what Jacob is saying. So a few things I saw. He was economical on majority of his runs, processed the cutback lanes, processed the blocks well. He showed off on a lot of these plays that jump cut that he had on his UNC film. Specifically on an outside zone run for 9 yards later in the game. But his most impressive run by far, if you guys want to check it out on tape, is 9:52 in the 3rd quarter. They ran inside zone. He had 21-yard gain. I mean, that was the Javonte Williams I saw at UNC. That ability to just low pad level at all times, explode once he gets the football away from contact. He forced a missed tackle on inside penetration earlier in the game, which I thought was really good. He had 2 runs of 11+ yards on his first 4 attempts. He had a really smart high IQ run on the second run of the game, which was an inside zone. He did a great job processing the play. He knows the cutback lane is left, but he presses right immediately to set up that cutback lane and then uses that excellent jump cut that I was talking about to get an extra 15 yards. He actually got contacted on that play sooner than I expected after the jump cut, broke that tackle, got another 10 after contact. He was more explosive getting downhill. He looked a lot more like that back I saw on UNC. And, we always say, like, when players are coming off major injuries, ACL especially, like, give them some time to kind of regain their form. That could be happening right here with Javonte Williams, and this could be a great time to buy low.
All right. Anything else? Yeah, just some quick usage notes, and you guys can, when I'm done, talk about any of these that you want. I need to take an L on DJ Moore. He's somebody we've talked about on here, and I was too low on him. Basically, going into the year, it was a math problem, and I didn't think that he would be able to be productive in this offense because he would have to have like a 30% target share, which is something we've never seen from DJ Moore, even when he's had not very much target competition in the past. But that's exactly what he's doing. So since his week 1 dud and the games following that, his target shares are 32, 33, 40, 28, 30, and 25%. Super consistent with tons of upside as well. From week 2 on, he's wide receiver 5 in target share, 31%, wide receiver 6 in air yardage share, and wide receiver 6 in fantasy points per game as well. Take all this with a grain of salt. The offense right now, Tyson Bagent had a 2-yard average depth of target this week. Just a ton of checkdowns. And so, like, it's going to be really tough to be fantasy relevant within that framework. But in terms of like DJ Moore, the player, isolated from everything else around him, this is the best we've ever seen him. He's caught 80% of his targets. He's producing explosive plays like crazy. Like, he's seeing all this downfield work and still catching 80% of his targets. He's really, you could say that makes him a regression candidate. Yeah. And there are tons of things that point towards him as being a clear regression candidate. So like, yeah, I'm not saying that DJ Moore, since he's a wide receiver 6 and all these metrics, should be valued that way. It's just like, look at what DJ Moore is doing. This is honestly incredible. It's unlike anything we've ever seen from him. And he's been really, really, really good at different points in his career. But this is, I think, the best we've ever seen. Puka Nacua. So I'm going to take an L, but now we get to take a dub here. Puka Nacua. Since Cooper Kupp returned in week 5, Puka Nacua has a 37% target share in those 3 games compared to 34% for Cooper Kupp, which is just insane. I can't wait to see his first read target data. We don't have that quite yet. Josh Downs, another super, super exciting rookie receiver. When him and Gardner Minshew and Michael Pittman have all been on the field together, Josh Downs actually has the most targets. He's only out there for 3 receiver sets, so Pittman has out-targeted him overall. But we're seeing Josh Downs. I just talked with Matt Harmon of Reception Perception on FFT Dynasty last week about Josh Downs. He's so good at winning in single man coverage. And we saw that again in this week. We saw it the week before on his red zone touchdown where he just makes a quick move, breaks off a guy wide open, touchdown. I think it's really, really impressive what we've seen from him so far. And I just want to bring him up. He's a late season breakout candidate. I mean, really, he's already breaking out at this point.
Yeah.
Josh Downs. Yeah. I like I said yesterday, I think Josh Downs should be the number 1 waiver wire priority. He's criminally under rostered. And I said that last week. So yeah, go ahead.
We're going to talk about all the rookie receivers in a little more detail later. Rashee Rice, just want to point out that he had his highest route participation of the year, 64%. His previous high was 51%. Marquez Valdes-Scantling was the only receiver with more routes run. Only Travis Kelce had more targets. So good note for Rashee Rice, who just continues to build that momentum. And then Jahmyr Gibbs, highest route participation of any player in week 7, which is awesome. The first time we saw him fill in for David Montgomery, he really wasn't used the way we would have liked to see as a pass catcher. But this week he was 10 targets. So like super, super excited about Gibbs. I didn't think the offense didn't look good. And I said earlier when we were talking about this before show, I don't want to get into big David Montgomery thing, but clearly the offense looks worse, I think, when Montgomery is not in there. But overall, the usage, everything, all the underlying stuff for Jahmyr Gibbs is really encouraging this week. So
you have got to be kidding me, Jay. No.
Yeah. I have some film notes on that too that I just want to go over real quick with the Lions offense, and then we'll get into some topics for sure. I just feel like with this, you're right. You can make the case that the offense doesn't work as well with Dave Montgomery, but I'll give a little nod to Adam on here that I just feel like one thing that gets overlooked by a lot of people when you're in a game script like that, because pressure killed the Lions on the first 2 series. Just unbelievable pressure by Baltimore. The pass protection wasn't there. Good design. This Baltimore defense, by the way, in my opinion, might be the best in the NFL. I really do think that. Watching them on film, it's so freaking obvious. But next thing they know, after the first 2 series where pressure killed them on both third downs, it's 21-0 at that point. So then you're trying spacing concepts that don't work on 2nd and long. Goff's not moving off his read. It's just like it's 28-0 then. So game script kind of ruined, in my opinion, any chance of that. But I did get a chance to look at Jameson Williams, so I know you wanted me to look at Jacob, because he's another guy who has all these unrealized air yards. But I think it's important to note the context of those air yards. They had 2 bombs in total garbage time on back-to-back plays with 3:08 and 2 minutes to go, down 38-6. The first one I didn't love. The second one was a good example of what Jameson can offer. Incredible release off the line of scrimmage, created about 2-yard separation, next level gear. But there were issues with Jameson Williams in this game. The interception on the 4th and 1 that Goff threw to Williams. I mean, that's just a communication issue that shouldn't be happening in week 7 of a season. You got Jameson Williams running the post, and you got Jared Goff throwing the go ball. And also, it was a good disguise by Baltimore, who had a safety looking like he was down in the box, coming into the box post-snap, and then he pre-snap, and then he rotates post-snap to just to the deep half where Jameson Williams is, understanding that's where they want to kind of go with the football. But, ultimately, when it comes to Jameson Williams, the first play of the game was designed target for him on a comeback route. Felt like he rounded his route out at the top of his break, and so the ball looks underthrown, but is likely thrown to the depth at where it's supposed to be targeted to, but the route was rounded out and not ran well. There's things I like about Jameson Williams, like I talked about on that last go route of the game, but there's also just things I don't like, and I don't think they're on the same page at all right now, Goff and Williams. So I was high on him last week and what he can do for the offense. As far as what he can do now fantasy-wise, I can see why, they're hesitant to play him so much, because he's still making mental errors that, we should expect, because he hasn't played a lot with this offense. But what does that mean for us in fantasy? It means, when can we expect him to be a consistent player? I don't know if that time's anytime soon.
Yeah, only 45% route participation in this game. He did see a lot of opportunities, 143 air yards with no receiving yards. But yeah, it's going to be tough with that route rate.
Yeah, okay. And we do have a comment here. It says, Jay Gibbs is great. Campbell trying to save him for stretch run. I don't know which Jay Gibbs they're talking about there. I think it's Jacob. So your last note was about Amari DiMercado.
Oh, yeah, you already hit on it. His usage was really through
Oh.
the roof. He had the second highest running back rush share, so they completely went away from Keontae Ingram, and it was all DeMarcado. Part of it was probably game script, but yeah, he's the clear passing downs guy. And if we see this again, like going forward, then he's like a top 24 running back, top 20 PPR guy. So yeah, just worth a note.
The Lions are kind of weird to me, by the way, because I just don't think Jahmyr. I don't know why they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. He doesn't fit what Dan Campbell wants to be. They should have just drafted another offensive lineman or something like that. I mean, maybe they are better with Montgomery. Maybe that's just the style they want to be is just really physical. I don't know what any of this means for Jahmyr Gibbs. If he comes back and has another big game next week, because I assume Montgomery's going to miss this upcoming week. I don't know that for sure. If he has another big game, who are they playing in this week? They're playing.
What if what if Craig Reynolds? What if Craig Reynolds is healthier and then a bigger part of the game plan? I think that was kind of the hidden thing here. He was not healthy. They forced him to play this game because they didn't really have any other options, and he didn't play a lot in this game, Craig Reynolds. So, and he had a touch early too on the first series, but still didn't play a lot.
All right, if Gibbs has 2 big games in a row, right? He goes this past week at Baltimore, and a lot of it was late, obviously, and then Vegas at home. If they beat him and he's good again, if they beat Vegas and he's good again, right? And then they go in their bye week. What does that look like coming out of the bye? I mean, Montgomery's not losing his job, but hopefully they can start using Gibbs more in the passing game, which as Jacob mentioned, they did in this game. All right, let's take a break here. We still have our 5 big topics, and we'll rank rookie wide receivers. We'll give you our top 5 for the rest of the season. We'll talk about Calvin Ridley again, and we'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
The group stage continues, with Italian staples taking on Champions League debutants and what's sure to be an unrelenting battle between Celtic and Atletico Madrid on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount+.
All right, folks, here we go. Justin Snow wants to talk about the emergence of rookie wide receivers and how you'd rank them rest of season. I am going to say Puka Nacua is number 1, guys. Everybody agree?
Easy.
Okay.
Easy one.
All right. So then after that, what do you got, Jacob? Rank the rookie wide receivers.
Yeah, it's been honestly a really exciting year for the rookie receivers once again, which is amazing because we haven't even had a real breakout from the top 3 guys, the first round guys in this class. And yeah, I think Zay Flowers is who I would have next. The underlying data for him has been really encouraging. He's kind of fumbled the bag a little bit on some of these opportunities, but to come in and immediately supplant Mark Andrews as the top target is really, really impressive. I would go Jaxon Smith-Njigba next. I after hearing Dan, I might move him down a little bit. But after that, I would go Jordan Addison, Rashee Rice, Tank Dell, Josh Downs. And then if you want to keep going, we got Jonathan Mingo, Quentin Johnson, Michael Wilson, Jaden Reed, Jalen Hyatt.
All right, for me, or sorry, Adam, do you want to give yours?
I have no idea where to rank Tank Dell.
Yeah.
No idea. That is the toughest one. No, go ahead.
So I think mine 1 and 2 are the same as Jacob, Puka, then Zay. I think that's a nice tier break. Then it gets tougher. I still, I was somewhat down on JSN just from this game tape, Jacob, but long term, I still see opportunity there because I'm going off of his film at Ohio State.
Fantasy playoffs, Jason gets Philadelphia,
right,
then Tennessee, then Pittsburgh, and that's beautiful.
It is nice. So I don't want to totally rule him out, but I want to put a player up there. And I'm not going to, I don't know, it's very hard right now to rank players, like Adam said, like Tank Dell. How close is he? Because when he's playing on the field, he's been unbelievable fantasy-wise. Jordan Addison, is he ahead of him? But I want to give some props here to Josh Downs, because here's the thing with Josh Downs. We're not going back to Anthony Richardson at all. He's out for the season. The rapport that Josh Downs built with Gardner Minshew when he first got to the team and he was working with that second team offense a lot is showing. It's carrying over. And like Jacob said, he was awesome on tape at UNC working with Drake May. He gets open underneath. He wins those 2-way routes in the slot. He wins against man coverage. He could seriously just be a top 3 or top 4 rookie rest of the season because of that rapport, which we've seen carry over so many times in fantasy football, how important that quarterback to receiver rapport is. With Gardner Minshew. So I would put him maybe up there as 4 or 5 for me. I really like Josh Downs rest away. And one other player I want to shout out here. Obviously, I want to put Rashee Rice over this player.
Who's 3 for you? Who's 3 for you?
3 probably is Jordan Addison, if I had to. Addison, Dell, Josh Downs in that same 3 to 5 range. I'm not sure where to rank them. Or sorry, JSN also. So those in that 3 to 6 range right there. And then the next range of players that I want to, Rashee Rice, worth talking about. But the next play of players I want to bring up because he's so damn good on tape. Jalen Hyatt.
Jalen Hyatt. Here he is. Yeah.
Look, he deserves some credit for looking damn good on tape. And he came inches away from a touchdown in this game, too, on a 3rd and 1 in the red zone, or 3rd and 2 in the red zone. 25-yard touchdown would have changed his whole stat line in this game. They're still expanding it. Brian Daboll said, there's still a lot of things he doesn't do well, but we've learned now that the only way for him to get better is by putting him on the field. And so they're finally putting him on the field these past 2 games. And I know only 5 targets in this game, but if he catches that touchdown that was inches away, that's a stat line we can all get behind. He's so explosive. He's so good against man. And if hopefully it carries over to when Daniel Jones comes back on the field, Adam, but finally the Giants are seeing if you're going to rotate those safeties post snap and give Jalen Hyatt a one-on-one, just like Tyrod Taylor said. Tyrod said, I told Jalen Hyatt before the game, if you get a one-on-one, I'm throwing your way. It doesn't matter the down and distance. And that was true. He threw him 2nd and 9. He threw him 3rd and 2 on a go route. He doesn't care. If he gets one-on-one, he's going to throw it. And hopefully that carries over Daniel Jones because he's going to get one-on-ones. That's how this offense is designed. That's how teams play the Giants. And so if he gets those one-on-ones and the quarterback's going there with the football, he could be interesting rest of the way too.
Okay, my ranking is Puka, Flowers, Addison. It's kind of an easy top 3 for me.
Okay,
I'm going to go Rice 4, Dell 5, Downs 6, but a pretty interchangeable list there. My concern with Downs is that I feel like Jonathan Taylor is pretty much back, and I feel like Zach Moss is going to be a part of it too. And they might just be, especially with all the turnovers that Gardner Minshew's committing, they're going to try to be run heavy if they can, if they're not giving up 40+ points.
They've been super run heavy, and I think that you're right. That's why I have Downs so low. I love him as a player, but I do worry about the offensive environment for him.
But I am going to take him over JSN. I love JSN. I love him as a player. I could see something happening. I think JSN has more upside than the guys in front of him, except for maybe the top 3. Like if this were an upside list, JSN would probably be 4th. But I got to see him do something good with DK Metcalf on the field before I buy in. All right, this is from Scott. If you were redrafting today, what would your top 5 in PPR be?
I would go CMC 1. Do we all agree on that? Just given the state of the running back position and what we're seeing from him?
That's what
I would go Tyreek Hill 1.
Okay, Tyreek was 2 for me.
This is PPR, by the way. Full point 2. PPR.
He's 2, you dumbass.
What?
What? McCaffrey, Tyreek for so is McCaffrey 2 for you, Dan?
No, this is where it gets trickier.
Get out of here. Get this guy out of here.
Okay, I'm still going McCaffrey too. The injury, I know he's playing tonight, but it's an oblique. I just get a little scared off of it. But okay, I'll say the oblique is nothing. I'll go McCaffrey too.
Travis Kelce.
Yep.
Kelsey's 3. 4 for me is where it gets interesting. Go ahead.
Top 3 I think was pretty easy. I had Cup 4. Did you say Cup?
Cooper Kupp and AJB are 4 and 5.
Yeah.
So I think I have AJ Brown 4. And then it's between Kupp and Diggs for 5. And I'm sorry, Kupp and Diggs for 5. I love Diggs' role also.
That's what I have Diggs 5. So I went McCaffrey, Hill.
You had no AJ Brown.
Kupp, Diggs, and then I think I would put AJ Brown 6, but I think honestly it just wouldn't surprise me if AJ Brown were still a fantastic option, but that DeVonta Smith started getting more targets. There is that obstacle potentially there. At what point is there a number 2 running back? Is there a running back that we're putting up there?
That was my point. Is there even a running back in the conversation? No. A. B. If we change this to half PPR, would the answer be yes? Probably not. You have to go all the way down to standard to really even consider.
But I could see that changing. Like Taylor, I think better times are ahead for Ekeler. We'll talk about him soon.
Maybe
Taylor is starting to trend up. I wouldn't be shocked if Bijan, especially in half PPR.
But are you taking any of them over these 9 target a game type guys?
No, not right now. No.
And so what does that say? Back to the argument we had on our first Beyond the Box Score show about anti-fragility. Ekeler already injured. Every one of these top backs injured or not performing at the level we expected. It's getting tougher and tougher to justify these. You only get 1 or 2 first round pick, a second round pick every year. And I only using it at running back.
You only get 1 first round pick a year.
Yeah, I know. I meant a first and a second round pick. Or in auctions, you only get a few big buys. just getting tougher and tougher to use those on running backs, I think.
All right, I'd love to continue this. Okay, Jacob, give me your top 5. Sorry, finish the top 5.
No, we already hit on them. CMC, Tyreek, Kelsey, Cup, AJB.
Okay. From Jim, Kendrick Bourne and Rashee Rice, are they must-start receivers going forward? I don't know if you guys were able to watch Kendrick Bourne. I watched all of his targets from the last 2 games.
I did not.
And that's kind of a lot of targets, actually. That's 18 targets. Bourne is not an explosive player. He is not going to wow you on film at all, but they are obviously very intent on getting him involved. It's wide receiver screens. It's 4 red zone targets over the last 2 games. They are doing a lot to get him going. His air yards, oh my gosh, his ADOT in the last 2 games. Let me see. Against Las Vegas, his ADOT was 2 yards. Against Buffalo, it was 1.9.
Wow.
So that's good and bad. I mean, you're not going to get explosive plays, but you are potentially going to get a very high catch rate. He definitely feels to me like the kind of player you add and drop in 2 weeks. But I will say there is no doubt the way they're using him. Like, for example, 2 wide receiver screens in both games to Kendrick Bourne in each of the last 2 games. He's playing 90% of the snaps. He even got come in motion at the 2-yard line or 3-yard line, little pop pass to him. That's reserved for, your playmakers, right? So I think they really want to get Kendrick Bourne going. I don't think the Juju absence matters, but Juju is a short area target who averages 5 targets per game, and he's missed the last 2 games. So maybe it is a few targets here and there for Kendrick Bourne. Obviously, Rashee Rice is ahead of Kendrick Bourne right now. And in a 3-receiver league, Rice is a borderline must start, I think. Bourne, I am more intrigued when I see how intentional they are about it. But still pretty skeptical of a guy at this point in his career on an offense that's thrown for like 200 or fewer yards, I think in 4 or 5 of 7 games. So that's my Kendrick Bourne spiel. He's not a must start, but more interested in adding him than I was yesterday.
To me, Bourne is clearly benefiting from Juju's absence. You hit on it with the low ADOT stuff. Even with these past 2 games, his average depth of target is still 10.6 on the year. This hasn't typically been who he's been. He's been somebody who's used down the field more. But I think with Juju at this point, like being a clear L for the Patriots, they're kind of shifting Bourne into more of this type of a role. To me, actually, the guy who's intriguing to talk about for New England is Demario Douglas, who got a ton of preseason hype, 6th round rookie. He played a season high in snaps this week, was second on the team among the wide receivers in routes run. And if you just look at his per route data, he ranks 17th in the NFL in target per route run rate. His yard per route run rate is really good as well. Take that with a grain of salt because he's only run 88 routes. But this is a guy who the team really liked what they saw from this summer, and he's been very productive. Clearly their most productive explosive receiver when on the field. So he's a name to note.
Okay, let's put him in the rookie rankings.
So that gives me a good opportunity to bring up Jalen Hyatt to just throw a little water on Dan's take here. Jalen Hyatt has been targeted on 8.9% of his routes run, which ranks 110th out of 112 qualified wide receivers. It's almost impossible to produce in fantasy with this type of a role. He could have got there this past week because it was like the ideal matchup. Washington just like gives up big plays like crazy.
Yeah, they
do. And they play Washington again later this year. But like outside of those types of matchups, it's going to be wildly unpredictable. Expecting anything from Hyatt with these kind of targets.
Yeah, but listen, man, this is vindictive, Jacob. This is about JSN. Dan uses his film to crap on JSN. Jacob's like, just wait till Dan brings up a giant. I am going to just destroy it.
I want to make clear I didn't crap on JSN. Just didn't love the film from this game.
Let's go to our next topic here. I hate to rush you along, but this is a more important one, I think. What do you do from William here? What do you do with Austin Ekeler and Aaron Jones? Dan, what's your take on this?
I want to go back to my preseason take with Aaron Jones, a player who was on my avoid list, clear-cut avoid for me because I thought this offense would be horrible. I was correct. He's not even the featured, not even the full-time, workhorse role in a bad offense. Not good. So I'm not buying him at all moving forward. As far as Ekeler goes, I kind of agree with you, Adam. Good times are probably ahead, but I need to watch the tape to know because I just didn't see the tape on this game. And I know they were in the game for a little while, at least into the third quarter. So game script wasn't awful there. But, is the role in the pass game the same way it was supposed to be? Maybe Jacob has some stats on that. Is he running the same way? Is he having explosive plays, yards after contact, yards after contact?
No,
he is
No,
not
right?
at all. In fact, he had okay, wait, where's the big play note I had on Ekeler? He had a 55-yard run against Miami in week 1. Other than that, Austin Eckler's longest run is 11 yards. He has 44 carries this year, and only 3 of them have gone for more than 6 yards. So I do want to point out that he, suffered the high ankle sprain. That could still be a problem. I also want to point out that his numbers are really bad in the first 3 games of this season. Granted, it's over 7 weeks. His rushing numbers were even worse in the first 3 games of last season. He averaged 2.5 yards per carry. He did not have a run of longer than 8 yards, I believe. I think it was 8 yards in the first 3 games of 2022. And then in the last 14 games, he was on pace for 1,700 total yards, and he averaged 4.9 yards per carry. And the running is one thing. Where the hell are the targets?
Yeah.
Is it the Kellen Moore thing?
One catch for 1 yard.
Because his target per route run rate, everything, Justin Herbert's running back target rate, everything is way down. For Herbert, he's throwing to running backs 10.4% of the time. The 4 seasons for Dak Prescott compared to Dak Prescott under Kellen Moore, 21.3%, 15.6%, 18%, 18%. So let's just say an average of 18% of running back targets for Dak Prescott. Justin Herbert's at 10.4%. Now, I probably should have done just weeks 1, 6, and 7 because he didn't throw to Josh Kelly at all. But all right, I'm sorry. I'm rambling a little bit here, but there are
these are good stats. These are really good numbers because we talked about in the preseason with the Kellen Moore offense. It's going to look different. Joe Lombardi's offense was designed to check down through that running back. Kellen Moore, and look, Dak Prescott's a different kind of quarterback than Herbert. He works through his progressions faster than Justin Herbert, and that gets him maybe down to the running back. Justin Herbert is looking downfield always, so I don't really foresee that role growing too much for Ekeler personally, in the pass game at least.
Oh, I don't know. It's going to grow a lot. It's going to grow. It's so minimal right now, but I just can't help it. He scored 22 points in week 1. He was Ekeler in week 1. He scored 26 points in week 1. He only had 4 catches, but that's not bad. And then I don't know, man. Jacob, what are your thoughts? My summary is I think Ekeler is a buy low. I do. I just hope he's healthy.
Yeah, I'm trying not to overreact too much. We don't have very many data points on Ekeler, but the target rates are really bad. But 2 of those games came against really man-heavy defenses, and running backs are targeted at a much lower rate when facing man coverage. That was the Cowboys and the Chiefs, the 2 games where his targets were down particularly. I view him as the RB2 probably. We were talking about that earlier, like who could push into that range. I think it could be him. I know it doesn't feel good, Dan, but...
Yeah, it's less on you than more on just like how bad the state of RB2 is right now.
Right. The offensive setup is good and could get a lot better. And I think that these rates will come up.
Aaron Jones, I do think he's not healthy. He played like less than 40%.
He took such a break off before playing this game.
Yeah, but he was limited in practice all week. It just doesn't make any sense. He barely played, in week 1. Week 1 was the only time he was healthy, and he got hurt in the 3rd quarter. And in week 1, he had 9 carries, and before his injury, AJ Dillon had 6. 7. So it's still going to be a split. It's frustrating. Again, I don't think he stinks. I don't think he's going to be garbage. I think he's also going to be a top 18 running back. I think he's going to be a top 18 running back.
It's possible because of how bad running back is, but it's like I said in the preseason, it's hard to find a way for him to score points in this offense.
One of the football analytics Twitter doctors who I actually like because everything he does is based off of data. I apologize to him because I don't have his name right here. I've been looking for the tweet and I can't find it, but he expected Aaron Jones to be eased in and be even after coming back for a couple of weeks, to still only be at like 80-90% efficiency. And he thinks that it makes sense, everything that we've seen so far, and that he should be back to, assuming no setback, he should be back to Aaron Jones within 2 or 3 games of returning. Which, if that happens, then this is clearly a buy low opportunity because week 1, he was a huge part of this offense. And it looked like the team was finally ready to just go away from A.J. Dillon and stop trying to force that, which I think makes total sense because A.J. Dillon has not helped them at all. Any A.J. Dillon play has been a -1 for the most part. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we could get a late season surge from Aaron Jones.
Touchdowns, I think, will be hard to come by. I mean, if you just look at week 1, it's obviously small as hell sample. They had 1st and goal at the 7. A.J. Dillon carried for 5 yards. They had 2nd and goal at the 2. A.J. Dillon carried for 1 yard. They had 3rd and goal at the 1. Okay, it's 3rd down. Aaron Jones comes in, 1-yard touchdown run. But I do think A.J. Dillon will have that role. I think we only have one more topic, or did I didn't skip one, did I?
Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, it's Calvin Ridley. But that's our 5th, right? Is Calvin Ridley a boomer bust wide receiver 2 like Gabe Davis? This is from Joey. Must clarify, Gabe Davis to me is a boomer bust wide receiver 3 at this point. But maybe I'm the only one who feels that way. But yeah, I spoke a lot about Calvin Ridley on Friday, so I will let you guys talk about it here. Jacob, first word on Ridley.
I think Gabe Davis is actually a decent comparison. I think Ridley has the potential to end up being a better player than Davis for fantasy and obviously for real life. We've seen that from him in a way that we've never seen from Gabe. But in terms of the way that he wins, the types of targets that he's going to draw, it's outside big boy wide receiver stuff. It's downfield shots. And the games that we've seen him struggle in, I think it's been kind of predictable. He's struggled against very physical press coverage, heavy teams, AJ Terrell, Marshawn Lattimore. He hasn't looked like himself versus press coverage. I talked to Matt Harmon. That's the one area where he is concerned. Matt Harmon, everything else he says he thinks looks good from Calvin Ridley and Trevor Lawrence and the connection there. So I think when you have him in spots like that, he's going to be more of a boom bust receiver like someone like Gabe Davis. But outside of those games, which really there aren't very many defenses in the NFL like that anymore. Most teams are pretty zone heavy. Outside of that, I think you can trust Calvin Ridley. So looking at his remaining schedule, San Francisco week 10 is a tough matchup. They play a lot of press coverage. And then weeks 14 and 15, he gets Cleveland and Baltimore, who are 2 of the most physical, aggressive defenses in the NFL. And those are tough spots for him as well. But outside of that, these look pretty soft matchups, pretty winnable matchups for him. And I think in those matchups, he's a top 15 guy still. That might be... Yeah, right. And that might be bias on my part because I love Calvin Ridley, but I think we've seen him win in those matchups.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, Jacob, it does come down to that, though. What he was brought in to do was to beat press man on the outside, on the vertical plane, which is supposed to unlock Trevor Lawrence. And like you said, the fact that he doesn't look the same way he did before leaving the NFL, it's not a great sign for the Jaguars offense as a whole or him. But like you said, there will be matchups where that won't be the case and teams won't be playing him like that. So that is a sign to potentially, bounce back. It's just a matter of, does he still have that gear?
He did have 122 yards against Buffalo, who uses a ton of press coverage as well, and doesn't have just the elite top-end cornerbacks like some of these other teams. I think it's been tough sledding. Like, these are really tough matchups.
They are. I brought that up. Yeah, I brought that up. It didn't make sense that he would have a good game against New Orleans. I just think it's discouraging that Calvin Ridley can't win in a bad matchup. I never thought that was going to be the case with him. I thought he'd be matchup proof. Yeah. He's not even close to that. And he usually peaks at 8 targets because Trevor Lawrence is spreading the ball around and Travis Etienne is stealing all the touchdowns. He has 3 straight games with 2 rushing touchdowns, which is a franchise record. That's it for Beyond the Box Score. Thanks for watching and listening, everybody. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you tomorrow with the waiver wire. Actually, we'll see you tonight. We got a live stream tonight before the game. If you still have a chance to start Christian McCaffrey, go for it. And we'll talk to you tonight at 7:30 p.m. youtube.com/fantasyfootballtoday. Adios.